It's my privilege to welcome Gajendra to this conversation with me. Gajendra and I are friends for over 30 years. We have seen all kinds of times together, and the way he has scaled heights on the success ladder is something which should inspire most of us. And I thought he could be the best guy around where I could invite him to be my partner in this conversation and think in terms of what does this data mean. 323 people participated, and I'm going to be sharing their thoughts with all of you. So this is only going to give you a backward glimpse in terms of what I'm going to be sharing with you. And now, here's the point that we would get started. Gajendra has played the leader's role, the board's role, all kind of roles. And therefore, from the industry perspective, what does he interpret this data as? Let me first of all present the data. And in the meantime, I conceptualized this poll almost a week back. 19th of April we started, and 26th of April we closed it. And this was done on web only, of course, through promoting it through WhatsApp, through email, through social media. And I was surprised because the speed of response was pretty good. Generally, when you send it to 1,000 people, 40, 50 people respond. But this time the response percentage has been very, very high. So I must compliment all the friends who responded very fast on this. And the guys who responded were primarily from across India. This was a blind poll. I don't know who said what. We have no way to find out because we did not ask them to disclose their identity. But we presume that these are all senior HR professionals or top management people who are thinking in terms of what could be the transformation priorities for HR during 2020. And I must also share with you, my friends, that this facility of doing this webinar is done with the help of Lung Care Foundation. Abhishek, our CEO, as well as founder trustee, is helping us out in this. So thank you, Abhishek, for this. I'm also the founder trustee of Lung Care Foundation. I divide my time into my own consulting practice as well as Lung Care Foundation. We are a Guinness World Record holding social impact trust. Do find time to visit us because at this time we are doing a lot of work vis-a-vis lung health, Khurana, and of course, we've done a lot of work with air pollution. The marketing part over, let me come to the brass task. So when we look at this, each participant was given a list of 14 statements. And we asked the participants to pick maximum 5 of them, only 5. Of course, somewhere I felt that some participant had even opted for 7 or 8 also. And in the comments box, couple of them wrote that, okay, all these statements are very relevant. It is very tough to pick and choose, but we are still made up our mind in terms of these are the topmost priorities for transformation for HR professionals during 2020-21. And we are now just left with 11 months and the whole year perhaps is going to be focused around this. So let me share with you one by one in terms of what could be these transformation priority. This is going to give you a complete glimpse of this. You don't have to read it right now because I'm going to take up one point at each point and also share the percentage responses that we have received. We did not ask the participant to disclose their identities, so therefore don't ask us in terms of what could be the regional data or city-wise data. These are HR professionals who are thinking about India collectively. So now let's look at the findings, and I'm going to be sharing 14 slides, each slide containing 1 point, and let's look at the percentage response which has come in favor. So the first point was abiding by the strict norms of safety. I don't have to explain all these things, Chandel, so I'll just be moving it faster. 47.4% people opted for it. And since you are looking at the data for the first time, Gajendra, just make a note of it. Though, of course, all these points will come on a single slide towards the end. So it will be a good reference point for you. But right now, just absorb this, and I'm sure all the other participants are also absorbing that. The second statement was accelerating organization-wide adaptability, resilience, and acceptability. 49.2% people favored this. Incidentally, 49.2% is the highest percentage we have received on any of the priorities. Third, faster adoption of technology solutions. Faster adoption of technology solutions. And the response has been 48.6%. I think people now realize that merging of the traditional world to the technology world has to be much, much faster. But we'll come to that during our discussion. The fourth point is improving the physical, mental, and emotional health of people. Again, 49.2%. So these 2 pointers received the highest favor in the mind of the HR professionals. Next, managing expectations of people, 16.1%. Managing expectations of people, 16.1%. Kajita, please keep a note of this figure because this will be a very interesting discussion if you look at the overall hierarchy of the pointers, please. I'm coming to that. Neutralizing fears and anxieties, 32.2%. Neutralizing fears and anxieties, 32.2%. Nurturing new competencies and capabilities. New competencies and new capabilities. So therefore, maybe a departure from the traditional stuff. What could be these new? We don't know. 36.8%. The next one is optimizing manpower and talent pipeline, 34.4%. Optimizing manpower and talent pipeline, 34.4%. And friends, those who are making notes, don't worry. If you have already registered, by tomorrow, you will get a link from where you can download this report. And I can also send you a link from where you can also download or view this video. I'll upload it on my YouTube account. Next one, outlook of top management towards long-term results, 21.1%. Now, this is again something, Gajendra, you need to tag because having worked with the top management very, very closely for many decades, now this is a critical part, 21.1%. Why? What could be in the mind of people? We will need to discuss. Reducing costs. Yes, 32.5%. And obviously, whenever the industry goes through hiccups, Gajendra, the advertising cost and the consultant cost really gets cut. 32.5%, where do we find ourselves? We don't know. And I'm sure a lot of consultant trainers would be wondering about that. Let's proceed further. Remote working and employees engagement. Now, this is important. How do we create the organization, processes, structures, review mechanisms when people are working from remote area? And how do we engage them? What kind of employee experiences do we provide? We need to wonder. 44.9%. There are already 50 participants in this program. Statutory compliances, including newer ones, 15.2%. Why newer ones? Because the center government as well as the state governments are definitely going to come up with something or the other. Right now, it is more in terms of payment of wages, but there could be some more thing, especially when, you know, the social distances have to be observed during this program. So what kind of provisions could be there in Factories Act? How do the other what kind of gadget notifications may come up, we don't know. But then the organizations will have to actually comply with those. Team and leadership impact in real and virtual space. Team and leadership impact in real and virtual space. So it is going to be an interaction in terms of the real world and the virtual world together, because everyone cannot be operating from a virtual world. And barring the industries where the IT dependence is pretty high, in the other traditional industries, the virtual space may not be there, or partly, especially in terms of supply chain. And the planning part of supply chain could be more IT induced, but the real goods have to be delivered. Trust rebuilding and communicating openly. Trust rebuilding and communicating openly. 36.5%. 36.5%. So now the question is, what next? 14 points we have shared, and I'm now going to put on screen all the 14 points. Here they are. This is what came in the form of a poll which people saw. Of course, Chandel, you know my signature style. What people did not see was that actually these 14 points, if you take up the first alphabet of each sentence, I thought, let me play with words. And when we were talking about transformation priorities for HR professionals, I actually knitted all these 14 statements into the word called transformation and created an acronym. And here we are, transformation, where all the points that we talked about in the poll are knitted into the theme called transformation. My old habit of developing acronyms. So now, for the ease of conversation for all the participants, as well as for your ease, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to share these points in a descending order, so that we know which points received the highest percentage and which one received the lowest percentage, and that will help us in terms of communicating. And now, my first salvo to you, be ready. Here comes the table from the highest to the lowest. Take a pause, 10 seconds only, and I would like you to react to the data which has come to you straight. Are you satisfied? Were you expecting it? Is it on a different line? What kind of surprises are there? What do you think could have happened? Do you agree with people, etc.? There could be multiple questions, but let me just put all these things together and I give you some time to speak.
I think I was trying to absorb the data as you were showing. And when you said that accelerating organization-wide adaptability and improving the physical, mental, and emotional health are the highest scoring points in amongst these 14 months. Of course, I see there are few more, like faster adoption of technology, abiding by strict norms of safety, and remote working. Little bit in line, but I thought there that some of these points which are way below could be the points which the HR fraternity would like to take them up on priority for of people.
Yep.
That's one thing, because I see, for example, about technology, which is at number 3. I think there is a lot of talk about technology and technology solutions, but I think as human beings, people still want high touch. Although there is high technology, but you can take technology to whatever levels, but human beings would still
Absolutely.
like to have high touch also. They want to be touched in terms of their emotions, feelings, etc.
Yep.
So that's what I thought. Then other thing I was thinking is neutralizing fears and anxieties, because if you look at the people in the organization and you look at the bottom half of the organization, there the anxieties are the highest.
Absolutely.
Because they don't know what's going to happen. Jobs are going to stay, not going to stay, how much salary, because everybody is talking of salary reductions these days. Every other day I am on the calls with companies who are wanting to discuss about that aspect. And the other aspect which I thought could be much higher is trust rebuilding and communicating openly. As HR professionals, I thought these could be high up in the agenda, but a little bit of surprising.
My observation is slightly different than yours on this, because if you really take up the top 5 pointers, Gajendra, these are all safety, health-oriented pointers. And therefore, when we talk about 2020, 2021, I think the concern for everyone is going to be, how do we ensure a safe working place first? Other things come later. What is your reaction on this?
See, safe working, before that, I must have a job.
Sure.
Yeah. So I must have the trust in the organization, and trust, the organization must have trust in me, so that we can go through this whole storm together.
Let me add some spice to this discussion, please. Because this is a discussion, you can also ask me questions. When I talk on behalf of Lung Care Foundation everywhere, I say in India, we have a problem. I used to say, now it is changing, that living is more important than life, which means I must have some way to support my living. And therefore, people take the risk of even jumping into the gutter because they have to make money. But if I really look at the data in the corporate world, they feel, hey, my living is more important than the career itself at this stage. And since people are going through this, the anxiety levels are much higher. And therefore, I think this is a reflection of that. Your opinion?
So, Rajiv, that's what you would have also come across. All of us have been reading a lot these days, that in the Western economies, the developed countries, the so-called developed countries, where everybody thought that life is so important, so critical, so precious, I don't see anything that's precious there. In fact, in India, I find that the life is seen and is taken as far more precious. Otherwise, people would have just walked out. They would have just been roaming around. They would have been fighting with the police. They are not doing that.
Absolutely.
So I think here...
And that too, we are a nation which is not having that kind of a strictness, the dictatorial regimes which various countries have.
Yeah, so it's surprising. And I mean, people are surprised, but I am actually not surprised that we, as a nation, people of this nation have demonstrated in crisis how much disciplined we can be, which is very different from the other countries where you see the figures which are just so disturbing.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, coming back to this data itself. Now, what does this mean? Because let me tease you a bit, Gajendra. You come from very big, huge, humongous organizations. Whereas this data could be coming also from smaller organizations where the concerns could be different, where the top management is thinking differently. So in the overall context of India, small and medium enterprises and larger organizations, because whatever we may be thinking in terms of very large organizations may not even apply to smaller organizations. And now that you are into consulting and you are now having an experience of even comparatively smaller organizations, how do you look at this data?
I think when I look at the discussions in the boards in the last couple of months that I have been associated with, I still think that some of these things could be viewed very differently by the top managements of those companies, because I have seen the boardroom discussions in the last 8-10 months in some of those companies, and those companies are ranging from 300-400 crores to 5,000-6,000 crores companies. The entrepreneurial companies, or the companies which are still run by the entrepreneurs, they, I think, still think very, very differently. They think a lot about their people. They think a lot about the psychology of their people. And it's not just that they want to dump everything at the cost of getting the financial results. That's not the case. I haven't seen that. And therefore, I'm saying that some of these points may be viewed differently by the managements, at least of those companies, 7-8 companies that I have seen. Of course, they are taking their people along. They are talking a lot to their people. They are not discussing about competencies and capabilities and all that. They are just looking at human beings as human beings. They're looking at two things. One, the psychology of their people. The other is the cash flow of their business. They are torn apart, no doubt about it. But they want to deal with both, and they want to do justice to both these aspects and not one at the cost of the other.
I think that supports and supplements the spirit of enterprise also, because taking those challenges and keeping those problems also on your side. For example, 1 or 2 months you are not in a position to earn, but you still have to make payment of the wages. Well, you have earned in the past enough. You can actually sustain it, or maybe with difficulty involve your people and just go through this area, this time phrase for the next 3, 4, 5 months, and maybe then collectively work together. And therefore, creating the right culture, creating the right spirit, having the kind of right relationship, having confidence in people, and people having confidence in the management would actually make it easier for the organizations to sail through. What are your comments on this?
No, that's absolutely true. So there is a lot of communication which is happening in those companies. There is a lot of connect which is happening in those companies. In fact, I find the managements of those companies, they are far more engaged with their people today than they were in the normal times. And they know what's happening. I know of the three companies at least. I know they have asked their people, what are your spending patterns? What are your commitments? So they have run small surveys with their people at different levels, looking at what kind of spend patterns do they have in terms of their education of their children, their food consumption, in terms of the cost structure of their at home, and then looking at it and then deciding what should be done to deal with this whole situation. And most of those companies have not discussed doing away with the headcount. They are saying that they are not going to do with the headcount as much as possible. If business doesn't come up in 2, 3, 4, 5 months, then it might be a different situation. But today they are not looking at it that way.
Yeah, I think whatever we keep talking in terms of VUCA world and agile organization, this is now the time to really test it out, our own capabilities and abilities. Now, let me draw your attention onto the health part of it, especially with the top 5 pointers are reflecting more in terms of the health and safety part. And HR professionals are not doctors. When the organizations start opening up, maybe in May, maybe in June. Now, what are the things you feel should be the immediate priority actions? Because these are priorities, but what are those actions they need to do? And how to actually plan it out? What kind of support would they need so that the safety of the person from the entry and to the exit, and also ensuring that 24 hours a day, the person is safe? Because if he goes back home and gets infected and comes in the next day, again, there is a problem for the organization. So what are the precautions, preventative actions HR should be doing? Because they are not experts.
So they need to work with experts, no doubt about it. They need to get themselves also a little bit more educated, and it's not about just about the physical health. It's much beyond, or mental health even.
Absolutely.
It's far beyond. It's about the well-being of the individual and the ecosystem. It's not only about your immediate employees, but their families, the ecosystem in which you operate, their employees and their families. Because if the whole ecosystem is not looked at, uh, howsoever strong you may be, you will still not be able to do anything if your ecosystem is weak. So I always say that your mental health influences how you think, how you feel, and behave in your everyday life. But being mentally or emotionally healthy is much beyond being free of depression or anxiety or other psychological issues. It's much beyond that. Yeah. Similarly, absence of mental health doesn't mean that everything is great. So you have to look at what are those aspects, and you're, as I said, we need to work, we need to get ourselves a little more educated. How do we take care of the well-being of our people?
Absolutely.
In the short term, mid-term, and the long term, or everything put
Let me
together.
share something interesting here. In fact, Lung Care Foundation have started receiving a lot of requests from various organizations to help them out, guide them in terms of how do we ensure the physical safety and security of people, especially in this COVID times. And I'm talking to all my doctors team also. Even we have Doctors for Clean Air program where we have chapters across the country to galvanize their energies also, so that they could advise industries around, so that when people start working, not only in larger organization, even even the mechanics shed also, they would need a lot of safety and precautions, even in canteens, etc. How do we ensure that those simple things are understood by them and are complied by them? And these should also be as per the global guidelines. So this is something which is coming to us, and I also foresee a major challenge coming in. Acha Gajendra, we had planned that we'll discuss it for 30 minutes, and then we will also open up for comments. So if it is okay with you, I'll remove the slide so that we can also involve people into, and let me read out some of their comments in the chat, and in case they have any questions, we can also take up this question. Now, this is as I said, this is not going to be a lassi presentation or a chewing gum presentation that we keep stretching the data. This data is in front of us. The numbers are in front of us. We shall be sharing this data by tomorrow evening to all the participants, and I'm sure they can absorb it and further analyze it with your own people. But this is the data, because this is what the true speak of 323 HR professionals across India have responded. So if it is okay with you, I'll just stop the share and we'll just pick up some of the comments and the questions. Is that okay with you? Because in the next 10 minutes time, we have an unlimited account, but I still respect the time of the people. So we'll try to close it faster. Okay, Gajendra? Wonderful. So I'm just stopping the sharing part of it. And now we have a lot of comments. So let me just quickly read out some of the comments after the yes, hi, very good, good mornings, etc. Good evening, sorry. More virtual roles will be created and the new normal. My answer above. Great thoughts by everyone. Now, this is something which I need to ask you. New normal, the new phrase is coming up. I generally joke, we come up with so much of jargons that now there's another opportunity for all of us to create newer jargons. What are your comments? I mean, we do more of word creation rather than actually focusing on the results. Gajendra, your comments quickly. Absolutely. And this is not attributed to this comment, because new normal is going on and on. So what is abnormal about new normal? How new normal is going to be normal, we don't know.
In my view, it simply means two things. One, that whatever we used to think VUCA world, out of the window.
Absolutely.
Risk management frameworks, out of the window. Because
China is a great country, out of the window. Absolutely. Because in all conferences, we have talked nothing but China, look at China, and everybody's talking, singing poems about China. And now who's going to talk about China in the next few years? Nobody. So, in my view... And the new normal is an absolutely abnormal situation. There is nothing called normal in it at the moment.
So I think there is only one aspect which we need to strengthen in our organizations.
Carry on.
Resilience of people at the top,
Hmm.
the leaders, and resilience in the minds of our people. And it covers everything. It means physical resilience, it means mental resilience, emotional or psychological resilience, social resilience. You can also take spiritual resilience. So if we are able to make our people, their minds resilient, I think we will be able to sail through. And there is no better example than the armed forces. They build the resilience in the minds of ranks and files. It's exemplary. You can drop them in any kind of situation. Within split seconds, they will be able to respond. They are so adaptable. They are so resilient.
Gajendra, I got a question from Jhilmil Das. And the question is, what are the top transformation facets to be imbibed by the corporate leaders to address their team during this time? I think we have actually discussed that, but maybe you can add some more value to that, please.
I mean, this is what I said. One, how can you imbibe, or how can you inject, how can you make people more resilient, more adaptable? These are, in my view, these are the two most important and most critical aspects, which we keep talking about: competence, leadership, this, that, all that. These are the two things, I think, which will help sail any organization, any team.
Would I be wrong in my saying that this is the time where the top leader of the organization has to truly become an HR leader? Your comments.
I think there is no better time than the most difficult situation that you are thrown into.
Another thing, Gajendra, I want an immediate reaction to that, because in most of the conferences, I'm known for talking, very straight and blunt. And I always say this is a luxury in India that most of the organizations talk about it, but never believe in it. And the statement is, people are our most important assets. Sorry, this is very provocative, but
no, the other day I think I was on one of the similar, and I said similar program, and I said the two things are being tested to the hilt, which is, one, are people your real assets? Do you really believe in it? If you believe in it, what are you doing about it? Number two is, customer is the king.
Yes.
That's also.
And we have never been treated like a king. We've never been treated like a king.
Those are the two aspects which are being tested in real life situation today. The organizations. So the real character of the leaders is shown in the most difficult circumstances. And today are those circumstances when you can see the quality of your leadership or your organizational thinking.
Pardon me in asking another blunt question, Chandel. You can choose not to answer. I personally believe that this is the time when a lot of senior HR heads may roll. Now, how do HR guys ensure that they remain credible and therefore meaningful to the organization, save their careers, as well as contribute to the organization? And if not, when they come into our domain, I've been into consulting now for over 35 years. I have no problem in facing new competition, used to it. But when so many people have nothing else to do and become consultants and trainers, what kind of a market scenario will happen? Now, there are two questions. Number one, the first one, answer that. The heads may roll.
I think it is bound to happen, and I have seen in some of the companies, and I've seen some of the discussions. I got some of the calls actually from some of the people that they are not able to cope up with their management. And when I probed a little bit more, I found that they are themselves not resilient. Number one, they are not trustworthy.
The management is not able to cope up with them.
So it's either way. So I think they have not been able to build the trust, the trusting relationships, especially with their They may be able to get along well with their bosses, but I think more important or equally important is getting along with their people below and people who their peers are. So if they have not focused on trusting relationships, the reliability and dependability, which we normally tell others to be, heads are bound to roll.
So when those heads are bound to roll and they've come into the consulting and training professions, or these days the modern word is the coaching profession, and it cannot take more than what the supply is already overflowing. What kind of scenario do you see now that you are also a consultant and you are talking to a guy who's been one of the oldest consultants in India? And so this is in terms of the supply of competence and credibility, as well as even the fee structure, because the rate cuts and pro bono activities would suddenly go up, and that's going to spoil the market.
Well, I don't think much about those rates and markets and all those kinds of things, because
no, we may not be facing it, but then we have to look at the industry as a whole.
No, sure. The same thing will happen in this industry, this profession, whichever profession. Yeah. So whether you are an executive in a company or you are consulting a company, doesn't matter. It's all about building trusting, dependable, reliable relationships.
Absolutely.
Transparency with which you work, the purpose with which you work. These are most crucial, even more crucial at such times.
One of the questions which has come in the comment box, which let me just pick it up, is how to sustain the cash flow at this time. It's difficult to make full payouts. Now, this is a situation where the finance man could be in conflict with the HR guy. HR guy may say, let's pay it in full, and the top management and the finance guy is not in a position to honor that. What, as a senior HR leader, if you were to face these kind of situations, what do you think you would have done?
See, I had a discussion with one of the company's board today morning only. And I said, look at every line item, not just the headings of your expense statement. Yeah. So I said, balance sheet will come later. Look at your P&L. Look at your cost structure. Every cost structure needs to be looked at under the microscope. So this the finance director was also there, the HR chief was also there, so everybody was there. I said, for example, have you gone back to your banks and discussed that how will they rationalize, how will they help you in reducing your interest burden? Yeah, maybe one is, of course, the period can be extended. The other is that how much are they able to reduce your interest itself, the rate of interest. So look at every line item, whether it is energy charges, whether it is travel, so every kind of sales and general administration expenses, every kind of financial expense needs to be looked at. And HR profession is a part of the business, not out of it. So we must understand that every line item is being looked at, and it will, all said and done, there is a lot of pain in the whole ecosystem. Everybody has to share that.
Absolutely. This is a very vital point, because when the earning drops, even in the family, every member of the family has to sit down together and actually decide in terms of where to cut the corners and how to contribute.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So guys, this has been 40 minutes and we have been having a very interesting conversation with Gajendra Chandel, and I've also presented the data with you. The data we shall be sharing it by tomorrow. And in case you have liked this conversation, we're looking at the number of people who have stayed back because of the magnetic personality of Gajendra Singh Chandel. I keep teasing him because we are friends for 30 years. But if you like that, his discussions, etc., his pointers, just give a thumbs up or a clap so that we know that, okay, you have actually, or people are saying this was a very nice presentation and the discussion is held very well. And do send us your feedback also, because this way we can plan some more conversations. We will definitely be sharing our PPT, and people are saying it's an awesome presentation and very nice session. You can also see in the chat box.
Yeah, I can see that.
People are liking it, which is definitely a very enthusing thing. And because my friend Gajendra is with me, so my energy levels also go up. But then I tend to tease him, so just ignore that part of it.
I am only reminded of, before closing, Rajiv.
Yeah.
I heard this is about 23 or 24 years ago.
Yeah.
And this is just before Mother Teresa attained sainthood.
Yeah.
And she was addressing a huge gathering. And she said, I don't know about HR development and all that. I know only one thing. If somebody asked me about human resources, I only know one thing. Do you know your people?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And if your answer is yes, then second question comes to my mind. Do you love them?
Wow.
Again, if the answer is yes, then the third question which comes to my mind is, what are you doing for them?
Yeah. So what are you doing for them? So there is no need for, creating big jargons, creating big processes and symptoms. Just do whatever you wish to do from your heart. And that's very important. And this is the new normal. The abnormal situation is, forget all the facades that you wear as professionals. Forget all the imported jargons that we wear, because our entire management education has come from American and British books. And today, India is going to teach the American and British organizations in terms of how a country of a mammoth size can be managed well, with simple things to do, with people involvement, commitment of people. And that's the true spirit of India. And I'm sure we'll come out of the woods. We are not out of the lockdown. And we have to ensure that Corona has to knock down. It's going to be taking us time. But my dear friends, every day, all of you will have to make real, positive, candid actions. And wishing you all the best. We are all together. Do write to us. And those who are mentioning their email ID right now in the chat box, if you've already mentioned your email ID in the registration form, don't worry, I'll take it from there and send you the presentation from there. Thank you very much from our side. I won't say shake hands and hellos. It's namaste. And namaste is the new normal for all of us. Gajendra, namaste. And I can give you a more electronic jappi later.
Thank you.
So much. All right.
All the best. All the best to everybody.
Precisely 6:45, and that was the time that we had actually attempted. Have a great time, friends. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.